And we get the live stream rocking at the Twitter account. Where we go? We got to refresh.
And final check
There
on the
it
hand
is.
raise before we
I will do so. And then we pin it, and then we pin it. And then we check the hand raise. All the tardy kids in class who are showing up late.
I just got to say one thing about Clubhouse too.
What's up?
Has anyone else experienced an app like this where you've genuinely connected with so many people and like really kind of tried to go out and meet them and
Never.
really
Never.
talk to them outside of the phone? Like, I spent like 20-30 minutes talking with Ken earlier tonight, and that's just like a typical Thursday for me. It's just unique, man. Thank you, Tyler.
Yep. Well, here we go, folks. The top story today, air horn. I'm sorry, folks. We're breaking the rituals here. There it is. The top story today, Friday, October 22nd, happy Friday, is from Protocol. And it says, Twitter says its research shows its algorithms amplify right-leaning content more than left-leaning content, but doesn't know what causes the amplification. Twitter shared its own research today that shows its algorithms amplify right-leaning political content more than left-leaning. Twitter's publicly sharing research findings today that show that the platform's algorithms amplify tweets from right-wing politicians and content more from right-leaning news outlets more than people and content from the political left. The research did not identify whether or not the algorithms that run Twitter's home feed are actually biased towards conservative political views, because the conclusions only show bias and amplification, not what caused it. Ruman Chowdhury, the head of Twitter's machine learning, ethics, transparency, and accountability teams, calls it the what, not the why, in the interview with Protocol. Here's the quote. We can see that it is happening. We are not entirely sure why it's happening. To be clear, some of it could be user-driven. People's actions on the platform, we are not sure what it is. It's just important that we share this information, Chowdhury said. The Meta team plans to conduct what she called a root cause analysis to try and discover the why, and the analysis will likely include creating testable hypotheses about how people use the platform that could help show whether it's the way users interact with Twitter or the algorithm itself that's causing this uneven amplification. Twitter didn't define for itself what news outlets the politicians are right-leaning. That's an interesting point. Or belong to right-wing political parties. Instead, using definitions from other researchers outside the company, the study looked at millions of tweets from politicians around 7 countries and hundreds of millions of tweets of links from news outlets, not tweets from the outlets themselves. Chowdhury emphasized that Twitter doesn't already know what causes certain content to be amplified. Here's a quote. When algorithms get put out into the wild, what happens when people interact with what we can't model for that. We can't model for how individuals or groups of people will use Twitter. What will happen in the world in a way that will impact how people use Twitter, she said. Twitter's algorithms cannot just be opened up and examined for biases, and the home feed isn't run by just one algorithm. It's a system that works together, creating a system-level complexity. She speculated that if the analysis doesn't find that the algorithms themselves are designed in a way that creates bias, other reasons for conservative content success could be that some right-wing politicians are better at selling their ideologies online, or that the right is more successful at mobilizing support for its ideology. Another quote, the purpose is not to dump the responsibility on the users here. There is a lot here for us to think about how to give people more meaningful choice, more meaningful control over their input to the algorithms, as well as the output that's going on. Interesting. And for
what's going?
Let's go first. Hold on, Kerm. Let Illy go first.
What's going on here is that Twitter's machine learning is one part of a generative adversarial network, and the Internet Research Agency is the other part.
Karam.
Yeah, basically, in 30 years' time, when we can actually look back and we say a machine has sort of like have the indication which we don't have the slightest understanding of why machine is doing that, we're going to look back on this day and we say here we go. That was the start of it. So that's one point. On the second point, I think on multiple occasions, I think on the Trump and also on the Brexit, I think many companies have actually successfully predicted that that's what and they carefully took and scrapped the data from the Twitter, and then very successfully actually predicted that the Trump is going to actually win, and then also the Brexit is going to happen. Contrast to what the surveys were saying, like about 48 hours before the Brexit. So I think Twitter has got a lot more what we can predict, how the machine is going to evolve, and I think this is testament to that. What we're actually hearing today. That's all I wanted to add.
For a little background context for those who might not know, and most probably don't know, Twitter as a company is very left-leaning, like you would say extreme left-leaning. And that's not mentioned in the article. For sake of transparency, if you're interested in being transparent, and the main claim of this article is we're doing this in the sake of transparency, you should probably mention that your company is wildly extremely left. That would be helpful context in understanding this article, and you could understand why they're concerned, why they're, according to their data, their survey at least, their research shows that their platform is more helpful, for lack of a better word, to voices on the right, which would cause them kind of grave concern.
One of the things here that we have a Swedish report, I will try to find it later today, where they actually have mapped how the content is created on the different platforms, Twitter among them. And the thing is here that there's far more right than left content delivered to the platforms as well. And it was, I think it was 66% of everything was from right wing, because they are more, they have a more active ideology and have quite a few ideas. The other side here in Sweden, at least, they are quite dark, grey, and dull, and only bounce off things that gets thrown their way. Johan done.
Okay, next up, article number 2. Reuters says they have sources that ransomware gang REvil was hacked and forced offline this week by an active multi-country operation that includes U.S. law enforcement. And REvil, I'll just break the news to you, is Russian. They try to obfuscate that as best they can, but that's been not widely reported, but it's well understood. The article says the ransomware group REvil was itself hacked and forced offline this week by a multi-country operation, according to 3 private sector cyber experts working with the U.S. and 1 former official. Former partners and associates of the Russian-led criminal gang were responsible for a May cyber attack on the Colonial Pipeline that led to widespread gas shortages on the U.S. East Coast. REvil's direct victims include top meatpacker JBS, in fact, the U.S.'s largest meat company, the crime group's Happy Blog website, which had been used to leak victim data and extort companies, is no longer available. Officials said the Colonial hack used encryption software called DarkSide, which was developed by REvil associates. VMware head of cybersecurity strategy Tom Kellerman said law enforcement and intelligence personnel stopped the group from victimizing additional companies. Here's the quote: "The FBI, in conjunction with Cyber Command and the Secret Service and like-minded countries, have truly engaged in significant disruptive actions against these groups," said Kellerman, an advisor for the U.S. Secret Service on cyber criminal investigations. REvil was the top of the list. A leadership figure known as One Day, who had helped restart the group's operations after an earlier shutdown, said REvil servers had been hacked by an unnamed party. Here's the quote: "The server was compromised and they were looking for me," One Day wrote on a cyber crime forum last weekend, and first spotted by security firm Recorded Future. "Good luck, everyone. I'm off." Recorded Future is I would say the most elite cybersecurity firm. Google itself is a lead investor in Recorded Future, just to give you context as to how elite it is. U.S. government attempts to stop REvil, one of the worst of dozens of ransomware gangs that work that work with hackers to penetrate and paralyze companies around the world accelerated after the group compromised U.S. software management company Kaseya in July, which Swedes will remember that one very specifically because it shut down one of their biggest supermarket chains of 800 stores called Coop. That breach opened access to hundreds of Kaseya's customers all at once, leading to numerous emergency cyber incident report calls. Following the attack on Kaseya, the FBI obtained a universal decryption key that allowed those infected with Kaseya to recover their files without paying the ransom. But law enforcement officials initially withheld the key for weeks as it quietly pursued REvil's staff. The FBI later acknowledged. So this is incredibly good news, by the way, that a lot of the work that's been going on behind the scenes to build up a significant resources to combat the wave of ransomware attacks and Russian-led cyber attacks. This is an interesting kind of the first pushback of any kind of turning the beginnings
Tyler, I
of.
just joined. Hey, it's Jennifer. I just
Hey, Jen.
joined. So the FBI stuff is controversial because they had a key they were developing, or either had or developed, and I know there's some cyber guys in the audience, but had or developed a key, and they weren't ready to use it for Kaseya, and they ended up releasing it for that, like an encryption key, as you said, a de-encryption key. But and there's a lot of debate around whether they held it too long and should have released it earlier. And they're saying, hey, for national security reasons, we were developing it and weren't planning on releasing it here. And there's REvil, but there's also dark matter and then like black whoever. And those are the two that are coming under like scrutiny this week.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, you might remember, Jennifer. I'm sure somebody on stage remembers. I remember that when those headlines were happening, when the Coop supermarket chain was shut down, which was sort of causing a lot of headache and heartache up in Scandinavia, and we saw a headline that the FBI had secured the keys. And they were wondering, why aren't you sharing them with everybody? And I was like, yeah, well, they're probably they probably don't want to, they probably have a window of opportunity to use this to kind of infiltrate the network and figure out the source of, where the spice is flowing from, so to speak.
Tyler,
And, yes.
are you
No,
speaking
exactly.
of the index finance situation that happened?
That's
So
a whole
Tyler,
new
to go
topic.
back to
I
let
want to
me
make sure,
let me
Jen, we
go back
flesh
to
out this thought. Go ahead,
go
Jennifer.
back to where we were.
Yeah.
So remember, exactly, Tyler. So those conversations, and remember, REvil went on vacation because they're
Yes.
European. They went on vacation for the month. So the question was whether they went on vacation for the month, or they shut down because of diplomacy is going to be a big factor here in how we deal with cyber.
Yep.
So did they just did the Russian government actually like put big pressure on them and shut them down because they are state sponsored, allegedly. But anyway, did they? And then when they came back, the other big question right now is: did they come back because they did recently as themselves, or did they come back FBI like a honeypot? Did they come back as something as an enticement to trap other people, but other hackers and cyber hackers? But so there's just a lot going on in that arena that's just super fascinating. But yeah, to your point.
Tyler, you should be aware that one of the reasons that they also delayed the release of the keys or the encryption software was that the decryption software was horrendously bad. So they actually did rewrite it so it actually was usable, because it was a single-threaded decryption, but a multi-threaded decryptor. So they actually put some effort into upgrading the decryption software, because it was practically unusable as it was in the current state. And that you can find many reports regarding that. You and then.
Okay. Okay, so the next one is Google lowers Play Store subscription fees. Oh, little preemptive regulation there. So they're now going to drop their fees from 30%, which was sort of the industry standard. And by industry, I mean the two companies, Google and Apple, who have the mega duopoly of app stores. And this has been one of the huge issues of 2021, which is, why are you guys charging 30% inside of your ecosystems to all these app developers? That seems a little egregious at this point. And Microsoft was like, fuck it, we're free. We have a 0%. We're not taking any money there. And then that's a big middle finger to Google and Apple. And Google does have a tendency to not wait for the rulings to come down and drag out the whole thing. And Google preemptively now lowering the fees to 15% for ebooks and on-demand music streaming services to as low as 10%. So Google lowers Play Store subscription fees to 15% and fees for ebooks and on-demand music streaming services like Spotify, for example, to 10%. So this is great news for Spotify, actually, because you have a whole lot of people who were paying their monthly subscription fees through this app store, and they used to take 30%, and now they're only taking 10%. So 20% of a $10 a month fee, that means $2 more per subscriber to the likes of Spotify, which is, we're talking, you could potentially have 100 million people who were paying that previously. So that's 100 million times 2. You just got another $200 million a month, if my math is correct.
But of course they will lower the price for the people, since it's less cost for them.
Yeah, maybe. So next one is Snapchat. We're now, by the way, if you weren't aware, we are now entering Q3 earnings report season, where all of the publicly traded companies reveal how well they've done over the past 3 months. And for those of you who've been with us for more than 3 months, you'll remember when we went through the Q2 reports, and you understand how revelatory these things can be. And so now today we've got Snapchat and probably 1 or 2 more. And then in the next few days, we'll get all the other big tech companies, the Apples, Googles, what have you, Twitter, etc. So Snapchat's Q3 revenues is up 57% year over year. Wow. Well done, Snapchat. And daily active users are up 23%. They have a revenue of just over $1 billion, and net losses down 64%. But not all is well. So there's essentially a revenue miss, and it depends on what was the expectations on Snapchat, because you can have great growth, but if the market thinks you were going to grow even faster than you actually did, then your stock goes down, and that's what's happened in this case. So it doesn't matter that they're growing 57% in the past year. If the market thought you were going to grow 67%, then your stock goes down. And in fact, their stock has now gone down 20% as a result of their fantastic quarter, because the expectations were so high for Snapchat. And my buddy Jason has commented on this one, saying, if Apple is serious about privacy, they should buy DuckDuckGo or make them the default search engine and tell Google to keep their $15 billion. That's a great point.
I use DuckDuckGo as my default search.
But that would be a huge kind of instigation of a potential massive escalation between Apple and Google if they did that.
See, I would prefer to use DuckDuckGo, but unfortunately Google, especially Google Scholar, just has much better coverage.
It'd be amazing. I mean, to Jason's point, though, they don't even need to buy DuckDuckGo to do that. But if they did, they would have a search engine. And if Apple had their own search engine, that could get really interesting really quickly.
Start Page is an interesting alternative to search on Google anonymously.
So the next one is Windows 11 update fixes AMD CPU latency. Who cares? Next one, Washington Post. The terms of service for the Donald Trump's new Truth Social network. And it's always being shown in all caps, TRUTH. So Truth Social shows it bans excessive use of capital letters, ironically, because its logo is itself all capital letters, reserves the right to ban users, and hopes to benefit from Section 230 protections, somewhat ironically, because Trump is super hot about trying to remove the Section 230 protections for the likes of Twitter and Facebook and everyone who banned him. But yet he wants to benefit from those same protections. No doubt. They all do. And then Kara Swisher, who's a journalist, a tech journalist, and a bit of a bulldog, is known not to pull punches, took to Twitter to say, "Love the attack on big tech while also using the Apple App Store very truthy." So yeah, of course they have to use the Apple App Store. They have to promote their app, right? So, but interesting that the terms of service for the network ban excessive use of capital letters and reserves the right to ban users. Of course, why would you not do that? And ABC News has a sister headline that says Trump announces this was just the announcement of it, essentially. Too big in the App Store for pre-order. Mastodon founder says Trump's Truth Social seems to be using a Mastodon fork based on a screenshot of an error message featuring Mastodon's elephant mascot. Okay, that would potentially make it more stable. Former
quite secure.
Yeah.
Mastodon has done a pretty good job, actually.
Yeah.
Recommend looking at that.
Yeah. He says, well, that looks familiar, the Mastodon Twitter account tweeted in a response to a reporter who posted a screenshot of a Truth Social account. Another screenshot shows that the HTML for a Truth Social login screen still mentions Mastodon explicitly. Mastodon is a piece of open source software that people can use to create their own social networks. The platform has a timeline style similar to Twitter. Someone's deep in the matrix.
Johan.
Okay, well, hopefully they can join us again shortly. The next big story is that Apple says its 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Max, which they just launched on Monday in a live stream that we watched live. And boy, oh boy, does that M1 Max chip, holy cow, this is like a supercomputer in a laptop, a really unprecedented amount of power from this machine. Will feature a high power mode for intensive sustained workloads. The new 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Max Apple Silicon chip will feature a new high power mode for intensive sustained workloads, according to Apple, which means you're going to be consuming a whole lot of energy because that is one thirsty chip. The next one from CNBC.
Tyler?
Yes, I may.
Tyler, remember Michael was saying that?
Yeah.
Remember Michael was saying that the other day? He's like, oh my God. He's like, he wished that he was in the room because of how powerful. And he said, did you know, or I think Chris started talking about it as well, did you know how powerful that machine's going to be? And he was super, super excited. He said it was something, I forgot the exact specific. He said it was 4 by 30 or something like that. He was commenting on the system and the equipment, that he said it was a comparison of the speed of 4 by something. I wish he was up, that you could ping him in, because he was really excited about it and talked about it himself.
He was saying it was 4.
He has already ordered one.
80s, I think. I would, like to see that. Yeah.
We should be seeing the first reviews like Monday of this. Like actual journalists, tech geeks that get their hands on it in the wild and get to play with it, and run some benchmarks and stuff. And no doubt they're going to be blown the fuck away, because last year when the M1 chip came out, they were blown away, like really blown away. And this chip is like a 4x improvement on M1, which is almost hard to imagine, but here we are. So really looking forward to the reviews.
And this is just M1. What does this hold for M2 and M3 and M4?
Right. Yeah, especially when we get into the actual desktop. Not that I don't know that you're ever going to need to buy a desktop computer anymore unless you're doing like serious enterprise level stuff, because even as a video editor, this M1 Pro is far more powerful than any desktop computer that Apple has ever made. So I don't know. The need to buy a desktop Mac henceforward in the future will be for a very niche audience who's doing massive computational stuff.
You know that these chips also has SMP capabilities up to 4 CPUs. So I think we can anticipate a workstation like the old Pro one with 4 CPUs, perhaps. We know that there is article. I think I'm not driving car now, so I can pick up the article. But they saw in the specs that they are SMP, as a multi-processor support. So we will probably see both servers or workstations with both 2 or 4 of these as well, and that would probably scare the shit out of AMD and Intel. I had one last thing when I went to the Matrix about the Truth platform. Apparently, there was a fun gang of guys that actually snatched all the Trump's different nicknames on the platform, all of them. So Donald J. Trump, Donald Trump, Trump, everybody. You undone.
Yeah, for those who didn't catch that, somebody went in and registered the username Donald Trump. Hang on a second. For some reason, my laptop is about to run out of power, so we need to figure out what's going on there. Why is it not running off of the cable?
High power mode?
Is it plug in your power source?
Tyler, you need the
I'm
new
sure he's.
MacBook Pro.
Yeah, I'm sure he's on that.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's
your
on
power
that.
source. Oh, your solar? Let's see.
This is really weird. Power, battery preferences. I just got a notice that I have like 5% battery left, but I have the cable plugged in.
Check your
Might
power
it be
source.
that the computer, the algorithms have detected that you already want to order a new M1 MacBook and now committing suicide?
Is it
Early
plug in at
death.
the other end? Is the
Yeah.
wall socket
I never
occupied?
touched anything. It's really weird.
Is it USB-C, Tyler?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got another USB-C source, like a power bank or a battery pack or
Is there a
something else?
green light or red light when you plug it on?
Hold on.
That's a lot of help
Use,
desk that he just got.
yeah, I guess we should rename it to TechNet News Help Desk.
Yeah, Johan,
Don't forget to outsource it to Bangalore.
you should open a SOS room for IT and cybersecurity help desk.
You should open up terminal and run port. You should see what ports are open, dude.
Oh yeah, Chris, this picture is.
Yeah, I have a call center in India that might help you with any computer problems. They will help you with your money as well.
Wow.
Yeah,
You mean
help
the
relieve you
wallet?
of it.
Custodian?
No, the thing is that I hunt scammers. I have a ton of those phone numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the Nigerian prince?
I have a few of those as well. You want to talk to one? I can DM you a couple of phone numbers.
Problem
Keep you
fixed.
occupied
Here
for
we
the rest
go.
of the day.
So what's the root cause?
I have a standing lowering desk, and I raised my desk too high, and it kind of pulled out the power cable into the machine. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Sorry about that. But the show would have ended if the laptop ran out of power. So, next big
Tyler,
article.
Pardon me, I wanted to make a comment on these chips. So on the server side, there are already chips like the M1 Pro. Amazon has their own called Graviton. Is doing quite well in one of their zones, and it's faster and cheaper and all that. And of course, as you mentioned, Alibaba has just announced their chip, and that too is supposed to be quite strong, although I haven't seen performance numbers for that yet. And traditionally, as we know, Apple has shied away from beefier systems because of lower volume and higher cost and logistics, etc. That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
And Tyler, my friend who is a YouTuber in Beijing, he said because some plugins are not adjusted like
BBNA metrics.
Coming home. So that's some reason that might prevent people from buying the new Macs right now.
Sorry,
And
we
we
couldn't
totally
hear you.
missed it.
Oh, sorry. My friend is a YouTuber. He used Final Cut a lot. So he said because some plugins for M1 chips are not ready. So that's some reasons to prevent him from buying the newest Mac Pro.
That's always the case, but they will adjust that in the next month or two. Because the people who are going to buy that processor are the video editors, and they know that, so they have to rush to rejigger their code to be compatible with the new processors, which they will. So the next one is from CNBC, that Sam Altman's WorldCoin launches its cryptocurrency that it gives in exchange for users' eye scans. It says it has 100,000 users globally and is valued at $1 billion. And he's tweeted about it saying, introducing WorldCoin, a new cryptocurrency that will be distributed fairly to as many people as possible. Details about how it works at worldcoin.org. That just has a weird sound to it.
This one is interesting. Sorry for the background noise, but it's related to our security discussion and the gentleman who was talking about the identification blockchain system. What I think is interesting is
Nicholas.
It doesn't store your iris information or your biodata information. It makes a hash of that and creates a unique ID using it but not storing it.
So they say. And I understand you're Swedish and you assume people don't lie, but I'm an American. People lie. So, especially Americans. So we can't necessarily take him at face value on that unless that's verifiable somehow in its chain, which perhaps it is. And for example, the next tweet is by Jay Edelson. He says, "Oh, Sam, you're coming across like a Batman villain disguised as Batman. Give us your iris scans for some free crypto crap. This will keep our investigators busy through November." And there's no shortage of skeptics on this one.
Yesterday,
yeah.
Sorry, Tyler.
Go ahead.
Yesterday, I think you summarized it very nicely. I asked the potent question with any new blockchain technology as to why do you need a new token? And it is an important question. We won't go into why now. And you said to attract people to use the system. I mean, what? So that's a great summary. Why in a multi-level marketing company do you need to promise somebody future profits in order to buy a lotion to put on their skin? Why don't they go buy a superior lotion at a lower price from a supermarket? Because of the promise of future profits. It's the same system, in my opinion.
But what good?
You need to separate the technological innovation, which I think is fantastic, of the scans, and I love hashing things and proof of zero knowledge proof, and all this stuff is awesome. But separate that from tokenization, pyramidization, and so forth. It's just that's just my caution.
But the idea of a distributed fairly coin is pointless. If everyone is given $100 equally, that economically has no impact to anybody. So there's you're not achieving anything there. And in saying that, you're somewhat, perhaps unknowingly, although you're a very smart dude, you're somewhat revealing that is a meaningless gesture to attract people to give up their iris scans. It's really weird. So Mike Arrington, who was the founder of TechCrunch, who he sold it to AOL, he took to Twitter to say, "I can think of far more ways WorldCoin can go horribly wrong than horribly right."
Tyler, 100% agree with you. I just listened to a news report on this earlier this evening, which is they claim they're not trying to get iris scans for any biometric or data tracking reason. Right. They're just trying to prove, as you say, personal identity or something.
Right.
So, and they don't store any of it. Totally agree. It could go wrong, and totally agree. But their point is they're trying to get people on that platform, and this is how they're doing it. So
if it was a system that was open sourced and used a sidechain like Ben suggests of, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum, then I think it could be super interesting.
It's on Ethereum.
Yeah, it's on Ethereum.
I like the idea, but there's another way to do it. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, the concept of identity on a blockchain, but this idea of having to scan your iris. First of all, it sounds expensive for the business, and I just think that that's a barrier, and there are much better ways to do this.
Yeah, I think everyone's scratching their heads a bit. Eventually, the details will come out.
Confused.
Yeah,
I'm not confused.
Go ahead.
It answers the biggest problems. The biggest problem in identity is one biometric layer and one proof that you're actually alive at the time of sampling. That's the two biggest problems in all of identity. Like, I'll just leave it there.
You might be right, because they even say that what they feel their value proposition is what they're calling proof of person.
When we moved away from Touch ID, do you know why?
Because
spouses were able to take the hands of their loved ones and go put it on the phone and unlock it. So they had to come up with a two-step process. Face ID does infrared measurement of your face, correct? It does a map. But the missing part is that your eyes have to be aware and looking at the Face ID, and they have the ability to detect awareness. So you can't just be sleeping and unlock your phone. You have to look at it.
How about those who are blind?
I don't know how they unlock a Face ID.
Or you mean for the iris scan?
One of the things.
No, Face ID is not iris.
No. She's saying, what do blind people do with an iris scan?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, one of the things that people that have not been in the medical industry does know is that your eyes are never still. Your eyes always move, always move. They are micro fractions of movement of the eyes all the time on a living person. Your eyes are constantly moving. And this is the thing that gives you the depth perception of everything. So your eyes are actually a few degrees vibrating in all directions at all times, because that's the way that you get the light to hit different parts to get your depth sense. And there is actually an illness where this symptomatic movement stops, and you can find these people on the street, because they that have this disease, they are vibrating their head. I can actually find you a very good article regarding this one. So the thing is that when you pick an iris, or you pick the eye bottom bloodstreams as well, you actually look at those devices used for high security. They actually make sure that these micro fractions of movement is there. So you can't, there is a Da Vinci movie or something like that, where they actually pick out an eye and hold it up and open a door into some weapon of some kind. That wouldn't work.
You got to jiggle the eyeball.
Yeah, but you need to wiggle it so little. You can't do it by hand.
So you need a little machine, a little eyeball jiggler.
Also, your pupil dilate.
Hold on, I'm searching Amazon right now for an eyeball jiggler.
You will find.
You're not in Thailand. There's this thing that scoop up watermelon, right, in the round balls. Can that work?
But in terms of the scaling of this, somebody commented on they were doubtful about the cost. There's this orb device that apparently they're distributing to people who want to be
scanned.
Yeah, scanned, or scanners, let's call them. And I just think from a crowdsourcing point of view, that part of it would scale. I don't know what the cost of this device is, but that's another interesting part.
Yes.
We have in depth discussed this with eye diagnosis before, and the thing is here that we frankly have quite good cameras on our mobile phones that probably be quite sufficient to do it.
Yeah.
You need to hold your phone at the 20 centimeters from your face, and that would probably be good enough. But you need to take many exposures or longer exposures to actually see and be able to do this refraction of the picture afterwards. So no, I don't think you will need a separate device for it, because our mobile phones are quite capable, at least the later ones.
Yeah, their whole proposition is proof of personhood. But the whole giving out the coins to 1 billion people, I understand all of the metrics of like, oh, we have a platform of 1 billion people and we have 1 billion people using our coin. So you as a developer, this is a very useful thing to you. We have this network of 1 billion people. It's like, yeah, I guess. I still think what they're doing is they're going to monetize this proof of person chain that other chains can marry into as proof of
Just another
personhood.
airdrop, Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what you call an airdrop in crypto. It's where the shitcoins drop shitcoins into your wallet just to try and promote themselves. And often scams hang off the back of that as well. But primarily it's to try and create awareness of this new coin, and you get small amounts of it just arrive. It kind of sounds like that with a piece of hardware hanging off the back. Mm-hmm. And kind of, again, just brushing the Oracle, I wouldn't call it a problem, impasse under the carpet.
So the next one from that the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, study on the 6 largest ISPs, Internet Service Providers, finds that some fail to fully inform consumers on how their data is monetized, such as using browser history to serve up ads. So the ISPs have access to your browser history. That's interesting. Internet Service Providers fail to disclose to consumers how they use sensitive data, obscure privacy practices, and making money from your internet traffic.
Tyler, they get that from the domain name servers.
Okay. There you go.
Those are already pre-configured to use their domain name servers. So every time you look up a website, it makes a request to their domain name servers.
And also there are still operational squids, which is very, very large web caches. Even though HTTPS has made most of it redundant, the sites still get cached at these large web caches, and Squid is the free alternative. You have other more hardware near and ASIC driven caches that are part of major telecom operators, at least here in Sweden.
Well, check this.
That's a good point. Although they're not controlled by the telcos, they're controlled by the content distribution networks like Akamai and others.
Mm-hmm. CDNs, as we call them. Yep. So the next one is from CNBC about Intel's Q3 revenues of $18 billion, up 5% year over year. And Client Computing Group revenue fell 2% to just under $10 billion due to component shortages, aka the chip shortage. Stock down 7% after hours, and this is not good news, folks. When you have, although not unexpected that Intel would have a bad quarter due to the global chip shortage. However, but with Intel being a very big tech company, and the other one that we read earlier today, Snapchat, also an up-and-coming big tech company, both of them not meeting expectations for the quarters, that's problematic. That could send the tech companies tumbling on the stock market, and that's a problem because the tech companies are running the game on the stock market these days. So it could put downward pressure on the entire market.
But everybody else is going to be doing well.
Everyone else could be doing well. Yeah, but because the tech companies are disproportionately at the top of the S&P 500 these days, when people sell big tech, that could have kind of market downward pressure effects. So anyway, watch out tomorrow when the market's open. We could have a notable down day. The next
Tyler,
one,
what I don't understand about that headline is it's actually just related to the ad revenue within the App Store. So I'm a bit confused here. So the restrictions that Apple brought in affect ad revenue through the App Store. So what's happening to their other ad revenue?
Which company? You mean Apple?
No, I mean Snap. If that's the headline that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So Snap and others who have Facebook who have recently said that their ad revenue is being affected by the privacy changes.
Yeah.
But it's only for ads served within Apple's ad store.
Yes.
So I is that where they make the majority? I mean, I don't know, so I'm just asking.
It's a good
Is that
question.
where they make the majority of their money?
Right, because that went into effect around 2-3 months ago, and they didn't necessarily see that coming or didn't want to tell if they knew it was coming. And it probably did has caused them to miss revenue targets. It's a great point that this whole Apple privacy change in iOS 14.5 is going to impact Facebook and Snapchat and those other kind of social media networks. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that.
I can maybe add something to that. I think because I guess Jonathan was wondering if they serve ads in the Apple Store, but it actually affects all Apple users from iOS 14.5 and above. So on all devices having the latest version of iOS 14.
I understand that, but these are ads served in the ad store.
No,
So
it's served
the money
on,
that they're generating is falling because of a lack of ads in the ad store. My question,
not necessarily.
and I don't know the answer, is
it's served. So basically, ads served on Facebook and Snapchat ecosystem as well are impacted, not just served on the. So basically, if you're using iOS 14.5, the entire ad ecosystem on that device and software will be impacted. If you opt out, for instance, you won't see those same personalized ads.
okay.
If that makes sense.
I'm not. Again, I don't know the answer to this, but it seems to be ad revenue within the ad store.
No,
so
she just answered it for you. She says it's also on her platform, Facebook, outside of the App Store.
Right. Okay. So all the ads that you serve through Facebook that are accessed on just an Apple handset also are affected.
Yeah. So basically, all the ads an Apple user see at the moment, regardless where it is, if he decides not to receive personalized ads, he will no longer see them. You see ads, but they're just not tailored to your behavior and no longer leveraging your data.
Wow, that's massive.
Hence, the potential to miss the quarterly market estimates. So the next one is an analysis of 23,000 websites of nonprofits has revealed that about 86% of nonprofit websites, we're talking a significant sample size of more than 23,000, had third-party cookies or trackers, with some, like Planned Parenthood, tracking users' keystrokes. Hold on, we have an audio effect for that. Why is Planned Parenthood tracking your keystrokes?
Well, are they really, or do they have a plugin that does that and nobody even knows about it?
Let's read the article. And by the way, this Planned Parenthood, for the Americans know, but for the non-Americans, this is where young ladies go who are pregnant and weren't expecting it and are looking for solutions, let's say. And so it's understandable that those people would want to remain high, keep their privacy as a priority. So such organizations often deal in sensitive issues like mental health, addiction, and reproductive rights, and many are feeding data about website visitors to corporations. Last year, nearly 200 million people visited the website Planned Parenthood, a nonprofit that many people turn to for very private matters like sex education, access to contraceptives, and access to abortions. What those visitors may not have known is that as soon as they opened PlannedParenthood.org, some 24 ad trackers embedded in the site alerted a slew of companies whose business is not reproductive freedom, but gathering, selling, and using browsing data. A Planned Parenthood website. The research ran Planned Parenthood's website through a black light tool and found 28 ad trackers and 40 third-party cookie tracking visitors, in addition to so-called session recorders that could be capturing the mouse movements and keystrokes of people visiting the homepage in search of things like information on contraceptives and abortions. The site also contained trackers that tell Facebook and Google if users visited the site. So now Facebook could advertise to you based on, abortion, not based on information they were able to get from this website, Planned Parenthood, for example. The scan found that Planned Parenthood's site communicating with companies like Oracle, Verizon, LiveRamp, Tower Data, Quantcast, some of which have made a business of assembling and selling access to masses of digital data about people's habits. Katie Skibinski, the vice president for digital products at Planned Parenthood, said the data collected on the website is used only for internal purposes by Planned Parenthood and our affiliates. Yes, your affiliates. Those affiliates, which are all clearly listed on the website, right? And the company doesn't sell data to third parties. No, perhaps not. There's other ways to exchange value without selling. While we aim to use data to learn how we can be more impactful at Planned Parenthood, data-driven learning is always thoughtfully executed with respect for patient and user privacy, Skibinski said. This means using analytics platforms to collect aggregate data to gather insights and identify trends that help us improve our digital programs. Skibinski did not dispute that the organization shares data with third parties, including data brokers. Holy shit. That's pretty fucked up.
She just said they don't sell it.
Yeah, but nor were they disclosing that they were doing this either. Skibinski did not dispute that a blacklight scan of Planned Parenthood in Texas, where abortion has been essentially outlawed, churned up similar results. Planned Parenthood is not alone when it comes to nonprofits, some operating in sensitive areas, because, by the way, if you can, they could monetize that. Essentially, if you know somebody who's seeking to do an abortion, which this website now knows, this is the best honeypot ever. You get $10,000 per person if you can hand these names over to the government. Planned Parenthood is not alone when it comes to, and by the way, they're not selling the data, they're giving it for free and being rewarded $10,000 per the law. Planned Parenthood is not alone when it comes to nonprofits, some operating in sensitive areas like mental health and addiction, gathering and sharing data on website visitors. Using our Blacklight tool, the scan of more than 23,000 websites of nonprofits, including those belonging to abortion providers and nonprofit addiction treatment centers, the survey used the IRS's nonprofit master file to identify nonprofits that have filed a tax return since 2019 and that the agency categorizes as focusing on areas like mental health and crisis intervention, civil rights, and medical research. We examined each nonprofit's website as publicly listed in GuideStar. We found that about 86% of them had third-party cookies or tracking network requests. By comparison, when the markup did a survey of the top 80,000 websites in 2020, we found 87% use some type of third-party tracking. About 11% of the 23,800 nonprofit websites we scanned had a Facebook pixel embedded, while 18% used Google Analytics. The markup found that 439% of nonprofit websites loaded scripts called session recorders, which can monitor visitors' clicks and keystrokes. 89 of those were for websites that belonged to nonprofits that the IRS categorizes as primarily focusing on mental health and crisis intervention issues. Here's a quote. As a user of this website, by sharing your information with them, you probably don't assume that this sensitive information is shared with third parties, and definitely don't assume that your keystrokes are recorded, says a privacy researcher who co-published a 2017 study on session recorders. Said, the more sensitive the website is, the more worried I am. Tracy Plavel, a vice president of development and community relations at Gateway Rehab, one of the nonprofits with session recorders on the site, said that the nonprofit uses trackers and session recorders because it needs to stay competitive with its larger for-profit counterparts. Here's the quote. As a nonprofit ourselves, we are up against for-profit providers with large advertising budgets, as well as addiction treatment brokers who grab those seeking care with similar online advertising tactics and connect them with the provider who's offering the greatest sales compensation. Additionally, we know user experience has a big impact on following through on treatment. When someone is ready to commit to treatment, we need to ensure it is as easy as possible for them to be able to before they get frustrated or intimidated by the process.
I was just going to say, Tyler, it sounds to me like if maybe they wanted to do a fair investigation, maybe they can actually ask them to look into the use case. Because actually, yeah, nonprofit have pixels and trackers, but sometimes they run donation campaigns or even at scale education campaigns. So I feel like maybe they should ask them to give access to those platforms to see what's the nature of the ad they serve to users or how do they use this data. Because this sounds to me like it's a no-brainer. Every single website that is data-driven has these trackers. So
the quote from the, I'm just reading a lot of the tweets about it here. Okay, next up is that the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which as an American, I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with that bureau. I've never heard of that bureau. So U.S. Consumer Financial Protection, the USCFP. I'm a rather informed adult, an American who's never heard of that one.
I have.
Okay.
That was put in place under the Obama administration. It was the idea it was actually Elizabeth Warren's idea, and I think she wanted to run it, but she probably couldn't get confirmed. So I don't know who's running it, but
okay. Well, that explains why I'm not familiar with it. It's relatively new. So they've done a broad investigation into user data practices on Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Google, and other tech companies. They're now launching an investigation into the usage of user data by Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Google, and other tech companies. And what will they find? Well, they're looking to see if they're abusing their data, the user data, in a because this agency or bureau specifically is for financial data, financial protection. So this isn't really relevant to companies who aren't offering any kind of banking services whatsoever, which Facebook wasn't until this new wallet that they're launching, with an exception of they do allow for people to send money through Facebook Messenger, for example. So the question is, are they misusing data in a financial way? Here's a quote: "Big tech companies are eagerly expanding their empires to gain greater control and insight into our spending habits." True, says the CFPB director in a statement. "We have ordered them to provide information about their business plans and practices." So they're preemptively checking to see that their plans in the future don't violate users' financial data. Okay, so the next one is a company called Olo, spelled OLO. A white label restaurant ordering service acquires a company called Wisely, which offers restaurant-focused customer intelligence products. And that is data. when any customer intelligence products means a whole lot of data, a whole lot of tracking and whatnot. So a restaurant ordering service would be very interested in a consumer intelligence product. So that's why they're acquiring that one. That makes all the sense in the world. The next one is TechCrunch says they have sources that a company called Brex, BREX, which offers credit cards tailored to startups, has raised $300 million at a $12.3 billion valuation. So another fintech unicorn, decacorn, no less.
Brex is great. They're really good to startups.
The next one, Hong Kong-based company called Zanpool, spelled XANPOOL, Zanpool, whose software facilitates faster crypto and fiat settlements, raises $27 million. NVIDIA's GeForce Now cloud gaming service adds a $100 a month tier, with the RTX 3080 GPUs hosted inside a bespoke SuperPod server, offering 1440p games at 120 frames per second for the very low price of $100 a month. And we happen to have a regular listener, Mengdi Huang, in the audience who works at NVIDIA. So I wonder if, Mendy, if you could hop on stage and just give us a little extra context about this headline, if possible.
That's really a game changer. That just would take the
no pun intended
on the next level. Mm-hmm.
So hopefully she's listening and can say a few words about that. She might be sleeping in the audience. The next one is from the Wall Street Journal that a company called Video Amp, which offers audience and ad measurement tools across digital platforms and traditional TV. So now we can bring data to TV and save those dying TV stations. Raises $275 million out of $1.4 billion valuation. The latest round of funding led by Spruce House Partnership. Next, Washington Post says Lyft, the ride-hailing app, releases its first safety report. Says it received 4,000 reports of sexual assault. Oh, Jesus. Including 360 reports of rape. Dear God. On its app from 2017 to 2019. Holy cow. The company's first safety report came nearly 2 years after Uber's released a similar set of data for its app. Lyft collected more than 4,000 reports of sexual assault on its app in 2 years, 2017 to 2019. Can we do a breakdown per week or per day on that? So 2 years, 700 days, 4,000 reports of sexual assault. So that's 40 every week. Holy shit.
And a rape every 2 days.
In its long-promised first safety report showing the extent of the safety problems in its app, the company quietly released its safety report. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't wait for a fucking terrorist attack to announce this one.
You wonder why we want the autonomous robots and the autonomous cars.
Hey, wait, Chris, I want to ask, are those just complaints? Like, you use kind of a harsh word there, rape. And the reason I'm asking this is because I've had Lyft drivers and Uber drivers who I've met who will not drive after the kind of sunset because they have been put in situations where claims have been made about them that weren't true, or put in situations. So I just want to be clear, those aren't all validated, right? And they're not.
I just was doing the math. I'm sorry. I don't know what the crime was. Apologies.
Yeah. So I agree. I have no idea, but I just want to question those numbers.
Mm-hmm. Let's read a bit more.
Sorry, Tyler.
Yeah.
This is a little bit like the conversation we were having yesterday about why would Facebook disclose that governance group, right?
Yeah.
Because they're doing it. They don't need to. Lyft is not a listed company. They don't need to do all of that.
Right.
But it's part of that. If you're doing some kind of public service, you've got to be able to demonstrate some degree of safety, even if it harms them. That this report probably harms them, but I'm sure the rest of the report's going to talk about what are they doing about it, right?
So it says the company quietly released.
By the way,
Lyft
is a company, by the way. It trades.
Oh, did they did their IPO? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't aware. So it says the report, which was quietly released yesterday, nearly 2 years after Uber released a similar set of data, which tabulated 5 categories of sexual assault in an effort to make clear the extent of the dangers on the ride-hailing app. It included data for non-consensual kissing, touching, and penetration, as well as attempted sexual penetration and non-consensual kissing of non-sexual body parts. Wow, very specific data set here. In total, Lyft said there were 4,158 incidences of sexual assault on the app over a period from 2017 to 2019. Lyft said its definitions were overly broad to collect as wide a data set as possible. Lyft recorded 360 reports of rape over that period. Here's a quote. "We recognize that sexual assault is chronically underreported, and it can sometimes be months or years before a survivor is ready to come forward and report what happened, if they choose to do so at all," the company said. Knowing this, Lyft included any incident reported in 2017, 18, and 19, regardless of when the incident was reported to have occurred. Lyft intentionally uses broad definitions to classify instances of sexual assault. Lyft initially committed to releasing its safety report 3 years ago, following pressure on rival Uber on the safety of its app and transparency around the issue of sexual assault. Uber, a larger app that has the majority of the U.S. market share, released a report in late 2019 disclosing there were around 6,000 total reports of sexual assault in 2017 and 2018. Lyft indicated its report would follow shortly after Uber's, but only released it Thursday, covering the period through 2019. Lyft did not immediately provide comment on the report. Lyft has come under scrutiny for its treatment of sexual harassment and misconduct on the app. The company won over many passengers in the wake of repeated scandals on Uber that led to the Delete Uber movement, capturing nearly 40% of the U.S. market share as it approached its 2019 IPO. The Washington Post reported in 2019 that some found Lyft's response to reports of misconduct inadequate and dismissive, feeling their concerns were not seriously addressed. The Post spoke with nearly a dozen women who decried Lyft's response to alleged allegations of sexual harassment at the time. Lyft has pledged to improve its safety practices. For both companies, the problem appears to grow worse by year as the company's businesses grew over the period. The issue rose in prominence. For example, Uber logged 3,000 plus incidences of sexual assault in 2018, the latest full year covered in this report. Lyft logged 1,800 reports in 2019, the latest year of its report. Well, yeah, because they're growing in usage. So the safety incidences referenced in this report account for, so on a statistical basis, 0.0002% of trips, Lyft wrote in its safety report. But the problem of sexual assault went beyond numbers, the company wrote, and it was releasing the data in an effort to shine light on the extent of the issue. The issue of sexual assault on ride-hailing platforms has gained attention as the companies have grown, and the issue of pairing riders with strangers in their personal vehicles has gained attention on social media among law enforcement. Here's a quote. The report details the frequency of some of the most serious safety incidences that are reported to Lyft, which are statistically very rare, Lyft wrote, but behind every number there is a person who's experienced that incident. Put simply, even one of these incidences is too many. Generally speaking, individuals who are accused of committing the types of incidences detailed in this report will be permanently removed from the Lyft community, preventing them from riding or driving in the future. And my question to that would be, is Uber and Lyft sharing their blacklist? Because if you get banned from Lyft, are they able to apply on Uber? And I would bet anything they are. In fact, sinisterly, Lyft and Uber are, holy cow, vicious with each other in the early years of those companies in trying to sabotage each other, honestly, by creating bots to order rides, thousands at a time, and then canceling them after the driver's already en route. So they were playing all kinds of crazy games to sabotage each other. So wouldn't they then, if they had somebody who was banned from the app for rape, would be all too happy if that person were to go over to the competitor's platform?
So Tyler,
I'm
we
sure
have to
that
look at it from the
yeah.
perspective. Like I was just Googling just a little while ago while you were reading the article. If you look at the numbers, they actually served 178 million rides in the last quarter of 2018. So if you look at the sheer number of the actual rides happen, and if you look in the same year, how many races being reported to the actual authorities, that number was 128,000 all over the U.S. So if they're saying there are about 360 incidents happen pretty much in the last 5 years, I mean, I think we have to put things, and yeah, I mean, given that one is too many for sure, but look at the numbers, like 128,000 in 2018 all over the US as compared to what is happening in the ride-hailing app. It's just, negligible. But yeah,
And
I
Tyler,
wouldn't
I'm
comment.
sure. Sorry, Karam. I'm sure they have a no ride list, just like a no fly list between them.
I don't know that they share it with each other, though. And I'm not sure that they could. They would need to do that carefully, because what if somebody sues and said, you shared my data with another company I have no connection to whatsoever?
Tyler, to put it into perspective, on the London Underground, you basically get that number of complaints every month, every 2 months. So I see. If you look at, I mean, what is it? 99.9 something percent of trips are safe and uneventful. It's obviously just a small proportion. So obviously it's a problem and not acceptable. But I mean, does it mean that they're unsafe? I don't think so. I mean, not if you compare it to public transport. You just need to Google it. You'll see the facts.
Okay, I got it right here. The London Underground sexual assault data for 2019 says, where's the number? Okay, here's for 2018. The web, they make you verify you're a human by selecting images of buses. Okay. Next. And again, another page of buses. Okay.
So the article I'm looking at says 285 reported sexual attacks between July and September, and that was last year.
But the difference being, it's not the train drivers of the underground that are doing the sexual crimes. So
I don't think it's the drivers in these reports, is it? For Lyft and for Uber, it's just where they're ride sharing. So somebody, it might be the driver, but also it might be one of the passengers that they're sharing the journey with.
It's almost going to be the driver, like every time. I mean, let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, come on. If you're sharing the journey, you're going to report it to Uber when they're your friend. I mean, I'm not discounting it, but it just is less likely.
The real issue is if you have a victim. I don't know if you care so much whether it was the driver or a stranger on a train. I mean, I think you're going to pick whatever you think is safer. So I mean, there was a woman raped on the train in Philadelphia this week that got a lot of attention because there were bystanders and none of them did anything. So
it says there was
and
there, on the London Underground attack. It says sexual assaults reported on the tube have soared by 42% in the last 4 years. Attacks recorded on the London Underground leapt from 844 from 2015 to 2016 to 1,206 from 2018 to 2019. That's the 42% increase. So 1,200 in a year. And I totally am forgetting what the data was around Uber and Lyft. Or Lyft, actually, was the one who announced recently in that headline. What was it? Lyft. Oh,
the last 2 years.
They said 4,000 over 2 years. So about 2,000. Well, they did break down the last year, which had the most, right? And what was that number?
1,807.
1,800 versus.
Oh no, that's 2019. Yeah. So
versus 1,200. Hold on one second. Here we go. So the Lyft had 4,000 during the 2 years, but more in the second year, which was what? It was towards the end of the article where they broke down per year. Here it is, 1,041 for 2019. So if they had 1,000 in 2019 and the UK had 1,200 in 2018 to 2019 for that year, so somewhat similar.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think there is a comparison with the London Underground. I mean, when the London Underground talking about like the actual assaults, it's not just about the carriage itself. You're talking about the stations as well, and now it's running 24 hours. So some of the actual tracks, some of the stations are also covered. And when you talk about the stations, I mean, it's a huge space you are talking about where that could happen. It's not just in the carriage itself. Whereas when we are talking about the lift, that's the car, which is, a couple of square kilometers. space. Yeah.
Wild. I have to say I'm rather kind of sickened by the volume. That kind of shocked me. I wouldn't imagine it would be that high.
And Jonathan,
There was even a quite shocking story I was reading, I think last week or something, that a rape happened in the US. I don't know, I think if it was in Philadelphia or something, in a train station, a number of people just watching. I mean, literally watching in the train, passengers, and nobody even lifted a finger to call 911 or
Messy, what
anything like
state
that.
was it?
That was Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia
What? I'm
this
sorry.
week, right? Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Something like that. Yeah, exactly. I was watching. I mean, I was just
That
so
was where it
sick.
happened. Yeah.
That's awful. Like, I mean, they finally,
What
the
time was
woman
this?
just,
That's crazy.
it
What's going
wasn't
on with the
even,
society there?
they
it was,
grabbed the cameras instead of helping
That's
guys.
a very
The
and
well unknown group social psychology effect.
I don't
By the way,
understand
You see
that.
it
I
on
was
TikTok
just,
as well, and you see it on TikTok.
yeah. I
there's
watched
a
the
there's
whole
a late
thing and the
breaking
police
story on
came.
that for everybody.
Yeah,
But
and the police came, and then I think they just somebody recovered her, I think after a few stations, and then she was able to identify people, and then they look at the camera, and then they saw that there were like a lot of people in the train and just watched the whole thing happen. It just was sickening. I mean,
so
Yeah, just quote.
there's late breaking news about the veracity of some of this stuff. So the police are now saying, this is the last report, by the way, in Philadelphia, that they're not exactly sure who saw what because people get on and off the train. They're claiming that the story about people taking video with their phones, they claim anyway, is not true. Um, and so, but nonetheless, I mean, there were definitely people on the train, and so it's hard for me to believe that nobody really, saw anything. But I mean, the story may not be as bad as it was first reported, but so I just wanted to say that because the police, I don't, they're maybe now that they've investigated it a little bit, maybe they have a little bit better information, and they're asking people to come forward, the people who were on it, and they said, look, we're not going to prosecute anybody for failing to report it. There was one person who actually did call the Philadelphia Transit Police, and was a Philadelphia Transit Police officer who caught the guy and stopped, so, and that was the story. Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Next up is
Tyler,
yes.
did you cover the Walmart and Bitcoin machines at all yet?
Go ahead.
Okay, some of the Walmart stores are going to have Bitcoin purchasing machines.
Currently 200.
Yep, pew, pew, pew. That's going to be a little bit crazy now. This is going to be a floodgate.
It's interesting. I wonder, by the way, if I was a Bitcoin machine company, and my friend Frank at
I was
Safello
in Bitcoin conference, Tyler. There was 2 of them there. They were already doing it.
We've had them in Sweden since 2012. Thank you.
Pretty much.
So, and they launched on stage at my event, and the boss from the largest bank was the first user of the first Bitcoin machine on my stage at my event, and that was an interesting moment. He purchased Bitcoins from the machine in 2012.
It's going to be interesting how that'll work because there's the Fold card and BlockFi card and Swan Bitcoin has a card. There's a lot of cards coming out as well now, which will be interesting to see how that ecosystem starts to develop. And I think Visa, clearly these Visa and MasterCard folks are definitely also seeing it themselves. But if you notice all of the cards that have come out in the US, the logo has been Visa. But Tyler, isn't it interesting that the logo has been Visa for almost a year now plus, and only recently Visa has admitted to any doings with Bitcoin and crypto?
I don't know, but
I just received yesterday my Coinbase card, which I can actually use anywhere to pay for the services and anything.
But Tyler, remember we've made announcements of it, and there've always been sort of the naysayers and all the back and forth about all the drama around Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and MasterCard and Visa. But Visa has been heavily around the crypto space since 2016, okay, heavily. And the first one to put it on their card in the Lithuanian European area was Revolut, which is now going to introduce its own token as well soon. Now, on the flip side of that, but there was never any mainstream awareness that Visa was working as swiftly as they have been working, no pun intended, on the back end, because clearly BlockFi, Fold, Coinbase, the gentleman who said he has got his Coinbase card, is it a Visa logo at the bottom?
Was that a question?
Visa logo? Yeah, it was a question. Was there a Visa logo at the bottom of that Coinbase card?
Oh, that's for Karam. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was just asking because
No. There's
okay.
there's no Visa or MasterCard. It's just I don't know how they're doing it.
It's interesting as well because there's an intertwined game going on here. If you see it, Tyler, as well, because Facebook is also collaborating with Paxos and Coinbase for their wallet. So it now you start to see a lot more people stepping in to present that they've been engaging in this space, even though for months, maybe even the past year, they haven't really been saying it in the mainstream. And I just feel like now more companies are going to come forward and start showing how much they have really been working in the space behind the scenes.
Okay. So the next article...
So just quickly, so there is I don't know whether it's a pigeon or a hawk. There's a silver thing on the back of it.
Yeah, it's a hologram.
It's a NFC. Yeah, it's an NFC card. So it's a touch and go.
That's a Visa.
Also, and also it's got.
That's a Visa card, Chris?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't.
The Eagle's a Visa.
Pew pew pew. Sorry, there you go. Pew pew pew.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't even take off the actual sticker off of that. Just underneath it says Visa. Sorry, just a correction.
But there goes the whole connection, because now the NFTs with Coinbase, and it's just going to bring in a tsunami of more revenue inside to that platform. And I think Visa might be winning the game between Visa and MasterCard.
This is the U.S. dollar and Bitcoin tag teaming to try to defeat the Belt and Road Initiative.
Okay, next up, a company called Pomelo, which was founded earlier this year to make fintech as a service fintech infrastructure for Latin America, raises $35 million from Tiger Global, which makes all the sense in the world. And the next is that FTX, the crypto exchange, raises are you kidding me now? I just realized they raised $420.69 million, 420.69. Which
yep.
Which Musk fans will find rather humorous. And
I retweeted at Elon Musk on one of his latest tweets because it was pretty funny. He had a couple watching a screen on TV, and it showed BTC and Ethereum, and BTC was 69,000. I think Ethereum was 4,200. So he's being a little bit of a troll in some ways with it now.
Apple product orders, including the new MacBook Pros and the $19 cleaning cloth, are delayed into November and December due to supply chain issues. Store employees say supply situation is the bleakest in years, and with long delays.
Apparently, that's a star product, the cloth.
What, Cheryl?
The cloth apparently became the star product.
Okay.
Top selling.
Yeah. Can I trade in my last year's cloth for the new one and I get a rebate, a discount?
Yeah, you get some tokens from Mother Earth.
The next one is Twitter rolls out the ability for all Android and iOS users to host a Twitter space after previously limiting access to accounts with at least 600 followers. So here comes Twitter ramping up their Clubhouse clone, where now everyone can make a space. That just opened up 95% more people to create Twitter spaces. And the kind of last big step is to roll out the hallway, which they still don't have. But that could happen any day. Probably this week, actually. Next week. We're on Friday already. So almost certainly will happen in the next week or two. And that's when things will get really interesting here in Clubhouse. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Didn't Jane find something about the hallway in the code?
Say again, Jane?
Yeah,
she was the
didn't
first to
she?
find it, yeah.
Yeah, she actually found indication that it was available but not published, as I understand.
Yeah, it's in beta right now. Many people have it.
Oh, okay.
And it looks identical to the Clubhouse hallway. But then I think for them it's an interesting issue because when you have a platform of hundreds of millions of users on both platforms, which also, by the way, works in a browser, you don't even need a smartphone. So you could have tens of thousands of rooms, essentially. And so that's why I think they're being slow in rolling out this hallway. When you have hundreds of millions of users, it will be very interesting to see how if the hallway is so big that they'll somehow have to work out the personalization algorithm for how to recommend rooms to you, obviously based on your friends in those rooms and whatnot. But anyway,
Tyler,
yes.
what should the names of, if you're creating Twitter space, what are the things, in your opinion, kind of things that should be created? Are you like tech news around the world? Have you got one there already or not?
Oh, it's based on you. Anyone can call any room anything they want. They don't have clubs over there. And anyone can name any space anything they want. In fact, you can change the name of the space in the middle of the space. In fact, every 5 seconds, you can change the name if you want.
Tyler, even on Clubhouse, you don't have kind of I'll call it unofficially a copyright protection. There's two rooms, both marked intelligent investing, and they're two different clubs.
Yeah, you have
not that anybody use, but
yeah, you have multiple NFL rooms, NBA rooms, and all that. Yeah, but I think they intentionally didn't create clubs to prevent people from hoarding clubs. It's all based on your Twitter account, basically. So the next headline from the New York Times, that Austria, France, Italy, Spain, and the UK reach a deal with the US to drop digital services taxes on big tech companies as part of a global tax overhaul in 2023. That seems to counter the whole global flat 15% big tech tax. US agrees to drop tariffs on countries that imposed digital services taxes as a global tax overhaul moves ahead. The US reached...
Tyler, so let me explain why that's a different issue.
Okay.
The tax you're talking about over there in Europe, this digital tax, is kind of trying to substitute for a VAT tax, because it's not a physical product. It's not related to an income tax.
Yep. Okay. It says the U.S. reached an agreement on Thursday with Austria, France, Italy, Spain, Britain that will terminate the threat of American tariffs on certain goods from those countries in exchange for the eventual removal of digital services taxes that they had imposed on companies like Facebook, Amazon, and Google. The agreement comes as more than 130 countries agreed this month to an overhaul of the international tax system that will prompt nations to adopt a global minimum tax of 15% and change taxing rights so that large multinational corporations are taxed based on where their goods and services are sold rather than where they operate. The part of the agreement that applies to the larger firms was a response to a global tax dispute between the US and European countries, which in recent years imposed a digital services tax, like a digital VAT, as Ken is saying, essentially, targeted at American tech giants. Through the deal reached on Thursday, Austria, France, Italy, Spain, and Britain will remove their digital services taxes once that part of the global agreement known as Pillar 1 is enacted, which will occur in 2023. Okay, next up is...
Does it cover the SaaS company too?
We don't know.
Okay, you tweet that, I'll read.
Here it comes. Copy link, and there it goes to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW. The next one is a company called Parallel, which is making a sci-fi NFT card game based on Ethereum, raises $50 million at a $500 million valuation. Mojito, which lets clients like Sotheby's sell NFTs from their own storefronts or websites, raises $20 million at $100 million valuation, and that's very interesting. Allowing folks to create NFT stores or websites. And now you'll have this massive proliferation of sites selling and doing NFTs. Google begins offering Stadia as a white label product, starting with letting AT&T customers play Batman for free inside of the Chrome or Edge browsers. And interestingly, not on Safari, because it's Google after all. And then Bloomberg says they have sources that Intel's talks with chip designer called Sci5 ended without a deal, and the startup instead plans to pursue outside investment and an IPO. Amazon rolls out something called local selling, an in-store pickup option for items from local businesses in the U.S. Oh, that's super interesting.
That what we were saying? Isn't that what I was saying about the Starbucks too, Tyler?
This is crazy interesting. Wow.
And I sent it on the back channel, but they sent me catalogs for my kids. Talk about evil. They put stickers in there, and it says, "I want this one. I want that one." It's like got 700 toys in it.
Okay, so it says Amazon said Thursday it will let third-party sellers on Amazon offer in-store pickup to shoppers who live near the merchant's brick-and-mortar stores. That's interesting. That's a huge win-win. So now you're shopping on Amazon. And here's the bigger picture. The big picture is Amazon is potentially about to get disrupted, and now with this headline, they've revealed that they understand it, and they're resisting it, and they're fighting back against it, because notably missing from Amazon, when users go to Amazon, notably missing are the stores near you. When you're searching on Amazon for pajamas, there's hundreds of options, none of which are anywhere near you, generally. That's a problem for Amazon, because there's a new company called Shopify, which is all about getting the shops near you onto a big platform like Amazon. But instead of the big e-commerce platforms, it's all the mom and pop brick and mortar stores near you. And they're having smash success getting lots of mom and pops onto Shopify, because they've made it incredibly simple for mom and pops and brick and mortars to make digital stores, e-commerce shops. And they're partnering with the social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat to allow those little mom and pops to make it super crazy, stupid simple to make a little e-commerce store for their little flower shop. For people who are afraid of computers, who don't know how to make an Amazon store, and Amazon knows it's very difficult, relatively, to make an Amazon store. And there's a whole lot of red tape and legal mumbo jumbo and craziness to become an Amazon seller. And even if you do become an Amazon seller, you're likely screwed, because it's a little late to join that party, because the people who are winning all of those, have thousands of 5-star reviews and have become masters of the game. So good luck winning on Amazon. And that's where Shopify comes in. And they're like, oh, you want to get delivery in 30 minutes? Use Shopify, because we've got all the stores near you. Amazon doesn't. The best they could do is 24-hour delivery, perhaps, in most cases, unless you live in a very major city. So,
hey Tyler, do you want a breaking story that just broke 5 minutes ago on a Reuters
exclusive? I will as soon as I finish the point here.
Okay.
Which is that Amazon now, with this headline, says Amazon launches in-store pickup options for local small mom and pop and brick and mortars, means now they no doubt will also enable, when you're searching for products on Amazon, say, oh, here's the lowest price, here's the one nearest to you. Which one do you want? You want the one near you that you can get in 20 minutes? In fact, you could walk down the street and pick it up yourself right now if you're so inclined. Or would you like the one that's 20% less and will arrive tomorrow? So,
Tyler, there's Point here. I know this is a very topic close to your heart, but also Amazon's developing a point of sale solution, so EPOS solution.
That's right.
And
too. Yep.
and that's going to take them not just into bricks and mortar retail, but also into payments in a huge way.
Right.
Yep.
So the missing link here is making it crazy simple for mom and pops to get their shop on Amazon. And if they enable that, which they will do now they're making it clear they're going to do that. They don't want to lose all of the mom and pops to Shopify. I think they've woken up and realized they're about to be wildly disrupted by Shopify, because Shopify traffic just passed Amazon's traffic for the first time last month.
They're being really smart too, because by doing this, they take the strain off of their transportation network. Because most of these small mom and pops would be selling it through Fulfilled by Amazon. So they'd be shipping it to a fulfillment center and then going backwards through the inefficiency of the network. Now they can localize, have the customer eat up that part of the pain. And basically, you'd never know that it was Joe Blow's shop. It's just buy it on Amazon, pick it up at this place.
There is another angle to it, and it's been going on for a while. So when you actually return the Amazon goods, for instance, what you had to do before to actually pack it yourself and then ultimately print the coupon, go into your dashboard, print the actual, the sticker, then stick it on, and then take it to the closest UPS. Now, obviously, that's a pretty much like, cumbersome process for you. Now they are allowing to go into Kohl's, and that's where they have the counter, and you just simply take the whatever you bought. It doesn't have to be in packing or anything. You just take it to them at the counter. They'll scan your app on, there's a QR code, and they'll print a receipt for you, and the receipt would come out with a 35% discount to be spent
Yep.
in the Kohl's. So they are actually killing two birds with one stone. So the
I would
Kohl's is
buy
happy
Kohl's too,
and
right?
Amazon is happy. So yeah,
Okay,
they're already doing that return thing.
let's go to
Yeah,
Ken.
remember it also drives footfall. I did a lot of work on this for Payzone and PayPoint sort of 10 years ago. Footfall, number one thing for mum and pop shops. How do you get people into the store? So if you've got to return your goods, then that's also an opportunity for you to spend money in that store. So, I mean, it works for Amazon. It also works for the smaller independent retailers. I mean, all of this stuff is, I think there's a project name for it, Santos, within Amazon. And this is basically how do we compete with Shopify, and how do we also become inclusive of bricks and mortar sort of mom and pop stores?
But I wonder if Shopify is going to require people do exclusive. Well, they can't. The government won't let them do that, to have an exclusive and not go to Amazon. Ken, you had a breaking news?
Yes, so this is probably we should have people from our European friends chime in on this European. So it says SoftBank Group Corp is in talks to sell the Paris-based robotics business behind its Pepper Android to Germany's United Robotics Group, according to sources and documents reviewed by Reuters, scaling back a business it once touted as a major growth driver. I don't understand. I don't know anything about this business. Hopefully, some people in Europe know more than I do.
Well, I guess Massa is not as fond of robots as he used to be. Yeah, the Massa, who runs SoftBank, traditionally have been very exuberant about the future of SoftBank's role with robots, and their Pepper robot didn't really get any much traction. And I think he's fallen out of love with the Pepper robot plans. The next one is that the Associated Press, AP, partners with crypto company Chainlink to authenticate data about elections, sports, and more via its blockchain. Very cool idea here.
Yeah, Chainlink are the oracles that are being used by many of the Ethereum projects and the dApps that are being developed on the blockchains, and it is something that is being able to provide real-time data feed into those blockchains so that they could do reporting on betting, accurate numbers, real-time data. And it's also going to be used with Polkadot once Polkadot launches as well.
Yeah, the cool part about this is if AP is verifying that they are the source of the data, then other blogs, sources, tweets, whatever can be like, here's the data of the election verified by AP. So it adds this trail or chain, more literally, of kind of proof of verification of the data. And that this whole concept of verified data is a very interesting concept that is enabled by the blockchain. It's one of the areas, and identity is itself a form of data. And this is where we're starting to see interesting use cases come to life finally that are enabled by blockchain.
The unique challenge that the Oracle could have, which is what is a lot of people, even Chainlink is addressing as well, is it's just actually recognizing the limitation around blockchains not being able to pull in data or push data from an external system as a built-in functionality. So that is where the quote-unquote Oracle problem is being addressed, because that is the part that people are struggling with. And that's why there's so many APIs being made, so much data is being parsed through APIs, through Web3, because that is what we want to see as the main areas that people will talk about when it comes to the quote-unquote Oracle problem, is what exactly is the Oracle problem? Why, what is a blockchain Oracle itself? Because a lot of people can't seem to describe what it is. And from there, why blockchains are not able to solve that Oracle problem themselves, and how the centralized blockchain oracles introduced a major risk for sure. But remember, the key word there is centralized blockchain oracle, where the stuff that's being working on is created the decentralized blockchain oracle. And also, Chainlink has a strong hand right now to be the standard for the secure and reliable oracles. And as I mentioned a month or so ago, Microsoft is already engaging with them. I went down the Twitter rabbit hole, and Microsoft is already engaging to start pulling data in with working with Chainlink on Microsoft Excel, which is what's used in every administration office, probably for most Fortune 100s. So at the end of the day, if we take away our sort of ethereal view of some of these blockchains and just look at the tactical stuff of what it's solving and what it's working on, it is making it possible for some.
I think this point is just, I mean, is so important for people to understand. Our Chainlink does not even begin to start to have any contribution towards solving the Oracle problem in the slightest at all. What you do is you trust Chainlink. So why do you need a blockchain? I just don't see how people don't get this.
But
we are
Chainlink is open source,
Chainlink.
so
it doesn't matter. It is not decentralized, and we are still
but
trusting
it actually isn't. It is decentralized. Why would you say Chainlink
Nothing is
isn't?
decentralized apart from the internet, the torrent network, and Bitcoin.
No,
and
but it's a decentralized network of oracles. So
who cares? It's fully under control.
But then
of a
why, if someone?
People.
Okay, so
if I make a bet with you about the weather in London on Christmas Day, and Chainlink's involved, I am very incentivized to go to the weather to wherever the API endpoints are, find the system admins and say, hey, Mr. System Admin, I know you like to give reliable data when people ask, but I've got a smart contract out with Tyler. I've got a bet about the weather in London on Christmas Day, and I really want to make sure that I win that bet. So just for this query, if you could just do me a favor and just fudge the data.
But you're describing a centralized blockchain oracle, Ben. You're not describing a decentralized blockchain oracle.
How is it going to achieve decentralization?
It's going to be the data provider will populate the data in to decentralized Oracle network, which are a series of nodes like Bitcoin. It's not one node, it's a series. And from there, it'll go into an ecosystem of decentralized computation. Let me finish. Which will then be parsed into off-chain payments. And that's where you start to see the decentralization processing of the information. And the irony is, SAP is already using this. Salesforce is already using it. It is
distributed. It is not decentralized. My definition of decentralized is that a nation state cannot affect the system. If you're telling me that
what you're saying is the decentralized oracle of Chainlink can be grabbed by a nation state.
The US government decides
but
to come
Chainlink
in and
is actually,
change
I believe,
data.
chain.
Or
But
if a
that's an.
sysadmin at Chainlink wants to change the data, I'm sure they can.
But it's not just one sysadmin.
But what's the network it's running on that's decentralized? We don't have hardly anything on this planet is decentralized. Nature, the whole of nature is. And then the internet probably is. It's a bit questionable.
It's actually
torrent network.
middleware.
But it's not going to have achieved the network effects required for decentralization.
How so?
Because a large government actor, or even smaller, almost certainly can control that network if they try.
Okay, so let me just kind of make it very quick, because it could always be another conversation, because I really do like this conversation a lot.
No, it's really important. Yeah.
Let's just kind of get really present to what a blockchain oracle does, because I think there's a lot.
So let's not in this room. Let's do another room on that one.
Sure, no problem.
That's the deep dive.
No problem.
Yeah, maybe an oracle's deep dive is a good idea.
It is, yeah.
At some point, because it's so crucial. Yeah.
Okay. So Cheryl just found a really interesting article from DW out of Germany, who's reporting today that thousands of workers have gathered in the streets of Seoul, Korea, dressed up in costumes from Netflix's series Squid Game as a major protest. They say that they too are struggling to make a living, like characters from the show, and called upon government to improve workers' rights. And it's a rather spooky sight, seeing all these people dressed as characters from Squid Game marching through the streets of Seoul. And Poppy found this one from the Washington Post. And the headline reads, "The accused spy knew stealth was crucial from his work on submarines." And his name's Jonathan Toby, and his wife Diana could face life in prison on charges that they tried to sell secrets about the Navy's most advanced nuclear submarines. We read that headline last week about somebody selling nuclear submarine secrets, and now the Washington Post is doing a profile on them.
This was the guy who was Captain Obvious in every email. He's like, let's make sure we don't talk about the illegal activities we're engaging in, sir.
That's exactly right.
You know what?
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this key under a rock in a park, but I don't want to be there when you're there, because if you're bad, then you could catch me.
So, hey, guys, I'm not trying to say this to be insensitive. I'm just saying this to be funny. When you see his wife, you'll know why he's going to prison for the rest of his life.
I thought they were the same person at first. I thought it was his disguise.
They do look very similar.
They look very similar. And so it says in the article that he understood stealth and was important. I was like, oh, so he changed himself into a woman? Because they look alike. I thought it was he had somehow made himself look like a woman, but it's not. It's his wife. Anyway, for years, the aspiring spy had gone to remarkable lengths to protect his identity and evade detection. With a cash-bot burner phone, he created an anonymous email account that could send encrypted messages, according to the FBI, then waited to use it.
Leave people with burner phones alone, Tyler.
And he even took the critical step of not paying for it with a credit card, which I'm actually impressed that he figured that part out. To avoid suspicion at his job developing America's most advanced submarines, he allegedly sneaked out sensitive documents for years, a few pages at a time, which he then said in his thread that I think I'm safe because I intentionally only took out documents one by one very slowly over the course of years rather than stealing them all at once, not to draw attention to myself. So to avoid suspicion at his job, he did it one page at a time. The Navy veterans' work for the U.S. government had taught him to spot the clues that betray insider threats, and according to an FBI affidavit, he would later brag that we made very sure not to display even a single sign of being an insider threat. But now, after all that caution, the foreign official Jonathan Toby believed he was negotiating with were pushing him to do the one thing he had been avoiding come out in the open. At first, Toby, a nuclear engineer and father of two, who lives in Annapolis, Maryland, pushed back in an encrypted email exchanges detailed in the affidavit. Quote unquote, face-to-face meetings are very risky for me, as I'm sure you understand. A month later, he protested again. I'm sorry to be so stubborn and untrusting, but I can't agree to go to a location of your choosing. He'd already threatened to approach other possible buyers if the country wasn't interested. An FBI agent testified at the court hearing on Wednesday. And eventually, after a series of trust-building exchanges that involved a secret signal at a Washington, D.C. building and a deposit of $10,000 in cryptocurrency, Toby relented. For almost a decade, Toby had held a top-secret security clearance, had been part of the multi-billion-dollar effort to build submarines that could remain submerged and undetected for the longest time possible. The documents he allegedly smuggled out contained schematic designs for one of the Navy's most advanced boats, the Virginia-class submarine, with a nuclear reactor that could run for 33 years without refueling. In this world where stealth is everything, and yet, despite all that technological sophistication, every submarine becomes vulnerable the second it surfaces. Anyway, it's a follow-up article now showing the face of the individual. And very interesting how he wanted them to prove, or they suggested we can prove that we are, was it Russia or China, I believe he thought he was selling it to. And somehow America convinced the Chinese embassy to raise a flag as a symbol that the FBI then told him, hey, look, we're going to change our flag tomorrow here at the Chinese embassy just for you. So it's us, because this is our sovereign soil. So you're dealing with the legit Chinese government.
They probably just looked at the schedule and saw that on that
Right.
day they were lifting.
Right. It's a holiday that day, and they're like, watch, tomorrow we're going to have a different flag as a symbol to you. How it sound good? Anyway, really interesting. This guy got caught.
I would have loved to be on the FBI team, or like maybe the behind the scenes on this one, because this is just like the case is literally laid out in the email. Like,
Well, he thought that email was safe because it was like a proton mail, which it turns out aren't safe. We've already read that headline a month ago. That Proton was forced to reveal identities of people using Proton. They're based in Switzerland.
But when people commit crimes, they don't say like, "Hey, look, I committed this crime" in an email. They, I mean, that's the worst part.
The free Proton emails are unsafe.
Correct.
But in the movies, American movies, they always show, the bad guys saying, "Are you a police officer? Are you FBI?" I mean, can't he just ask that question?
He forgot to ask.
Oh God, man, I hate to say it, but we're just really naive as Americans, right? Like the number one law in the world for us is false advertising, right? Like if you see false advertising in America as an American, you think you've struck gold somehow. And then the second one is, are you a cop?
Yeah. So Florian's going to launch the digital inclusion room here in a minute, and we'll just run through a quick few more of these headlines real fast. Well, he gets that up and running. Goldman Sachs is in Forbes. Forbes reporting that Goldman Sachs says they've now found another. You remember the Evergrande economic fiasco that's unfolding in China, which has now led to other major real estate developers collapsing. There was one yesterday who missed a payment. Well, Goldman Sachs says they found and that was $1 billion. Yes? No, $300 billion is the Evergrande fiasco. Correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Goldman Sachs says they've now found that's 300 billion, 1/3 of a trillion. Goldman Sachs says they've now found $8 trillion threat that they suspect is going to tumble, which would be, it's actually 8.2 trillion. So on the order of about 25x worse than Evergrande. And Evergrande itself is causing a whole lot of snowballs to start to roll in China's economy. And now they say that they've found something 25x worse. That's the headline. Goldman flags $8.2 trillion threat worse than China Evergrande. Goldman Sachs says the total debt of local governing financing vehicles rose to $8.2 trillion at the end of 2022. The real worry concerning the China Evergrande default drama is the inevitable where there's smoke, there's fire paranoia that accompanies debt stumbles. The most worrisome such blaze, says analyst at Goldman Sachs, is surging local government debt levels that President Xi Jinping's men have done their best to hide. The default tumbles at the globe's most indebted property development seem like small embers compared to the $8.2 trillion worth of local government financing vehicles outstanding. And that's just the LGFVs we know of. The data that Goldman's Maggie Wei, that's the Chinese, she appears to be Chinese, last name Wei. So Goldman's Maggie Wei highlights is as of the end of 2020. Clearly, the tally is higher now, perhaps markedly. 10 months ago, these shadowy investment schemes had reached 53 trillion won, up from 16 trillion won, or 2.47 trillion in 2013. They now amount to roughly 52% of China's gross domestic product, toppling the official amount of outstanding government debt. In other words, as scary as the 300 billion Evergrande story might be, Xi's government has a much bigger problem on its hands. The more acute, keeping GDP this year from falling too far below the 6% Beijing hoped to produce without adding to the nation's bubble troubles. The forces behind local government sitting on financing vehicle debt worth twice the size of Germany's GDP date back to 2008, even before the Lehman Brothers crisis. Communist Party dynamics encouraged municipal borrowing binges. The way local officials got attention in Beijing and rose to national prominence was producing above average GDP rates. That incentivized a couple of dozen prefectural leaders to engage in an infrastructure arms race of sorts. Metropolis's race to build skyscrapers, 6-lane highways, international airports and hotels, white elephant stadiums, sprawling shopping districts and amusement parks, and perhaps even bidding for a Guggenheim museum. Making the rounds on China's hinterland, one often hears talk of emulating the Bilbao effect. After the subprime crisis, this strategy shifted into overdrive. Local governments were a key engine then President Hu Jintao used to avoid the worst of the global financial crisis. The same with Xi's men when the COVID-19 crisis came in early 2020. The trouble with China's LGFV boom is the opacity accompanying it. For all their talk of giving market forces a decisive role, since 2012, China's leaders have made the country less transparent, nor has the credit rating system kept pace with the growth in Chinese capital markets. These days, international investment banks and news organizations worry that warning about China's local government debt bubble will open them up to retaliation. Yep, and you have good reason to worry about that. This headline from Forbes, from Goldman Sachs, will be met with retaliation. In fact, yesterday, Yahoo News' finance app, Yahoo Finance, which is one of the world's biggest finance portals, was officially banned in China because Yahoo Finance app includes financial news articles from the likes of Bloomberg and the New York Times, which are illegal and banned in China. So they had to ban the Yahoo Finance app because the Yahoo Finance app contains news that exposes precisely this issue, that China's economy is built on a house of cards.
Let's do the House of Cards challenge in China.
So this article from Forbes is precisely the article that they didn't want to get out. And they're very much concerned that people in China will find this article that I'm reading to you right now. Because they knew it would inevitably get out. And they've been in recent weeks banned all foreign media from entering China. They've banned all journalists from being in China. They've banned all negative news about the economy. And they've banned all citizens from even accessing negative news about the economy. They're creating a information vacuum to prevent this article I'm reading to you now from entering China.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. Time to sell Chinese shares.
according to Goldman Sachs.
But Tyler, an hour ago, news said Evergrande pays Mr. Dollar bond coupon, says Chinese state media. They paid 83.5 million for this bond. So they still trying to manage to survive, I think. But it's Chinese state media, so not sure if it's true. They say that they paid yesterday.
So it says local governments, it says these days international investment banks and news organizations worry that warning about China's local government debt bubble, which is what this article is about, will open them up for retaliation. Yes, of course. We've already seen it. We've already seen the retaliation yesterday with the Yahoo Finance app. The not a great look for Asia's biggest economy as it puts out the welcome mat for BlackRock, JP Morgan, and UBS and others rushing its way. Local government borrowing schemes scratch at another where there's smoke, there's fire worry that China's massive shadow banking universe. To be sure, China's government, as part of efforts to rein in shadow banking, has taken aim at more than $1 trillion of opaque products marketed as low risk and high yield. All too often, these so-called cash management products have channeled money into riskier borrowers such as developers. In June, the People's Bank of China and the China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission restricted such products from buying bonds rated lower than AA. Yet, as analyst Janet Liu observed in a July 12th report, cash wealth management products have been an important source of funding for the weak LGFVs that encounter difficulties in secure bank borrowing. We expect the change to lower systemic risk over the long term, but reduced financing options for weak LGFVs will further weaken their financial flexibility. That loss of flexibility could create control problems in the short run. It also serves as a microcosm of interlocking risks festering under the surface of the economy. Xi is making more and more opaque, which Xi is making more and more opaque, obviously, because he doesn't want this to be observed. No wonder why the travails of developers like Evergrande are unnerving global markets. No wonder, too, that some of the globe's biggest investors are taking a pass on yuan-dominated assets. For every Ray Dalio, who's very pro-Chinese, singing China's praises, there's a George Soros warning of the tragic mistake being made by those rushing into mainland markets. Exactly. So, and George Soros said specifically that BlackRock's recent $1 billion investment, they can kiss goodbye. Somewhere in between, folks like Cathie Wood at ARK Invest are struggling to discern whether China's tech crackdown is reason to buy or sell. It says, count Japan's $1.75 trillion government pension investment fund, the world's largest among the latter. It now says it won't even include yuan-denominated Chinese sovereign debt in its portfolio. The timing is bad for China. The FTSE, the FTSE Russell, is about to begin adding Chinese debt to its benchmark global bond index. In July, the GPIF president Masataka Miyazono said the investment whale needed to be cautious about investing in Chinese debt, and now Xi's China is getting Miyazono's answer. The biggest question, of course, is how the Evergrande chaos collides with excessive local government debt at the same time Xi pulls the rug out from under China's tech sector. If you smell smoke emanating from the greater China region, you've got some very rich company. And this is a Tokyo-based journalist writing for Forbes about Goldman Sachs saying China has a much, much bigger problem than Evergrande, which is these local government massive debt and overspending.
This relates to the book we were talking about yesterday.
Which one?
The gentleman who had a wife, the billionaire.
Oh, yeah. Well, even more, it relates to our friend David Chang from Beijing, who joined us in the room yesterday from New York, saying that all the New York unicorn founders are in New York trying to sell their companies covertly at the moment, which we all scratched our heads about. He even named, and it wasn't clear why. Why is he in New York? And why did he not say? Can somebody please verify what I'm revealing here? That we have a highly intelligent friend from Beijing.
What David Chang said yesterday is that they're all hanging out in New York trying to figure out their next move.
Well, they might be rushing to sell their companies because their companies being based in China might not be worth anything in 6 months if this article is correct.
I think what he's saying is they are trying to restructure the company so that it doesn't fall into that category, or to look for some.
They're trying to restructure the company so that they can be sold to American buyers.
Yeah, because
right.
the Chinese economy is crashing right now
Correct.
as we speak.
And they're worried that because their country's economy is going to literally collapse, and they can't sell it locally, they need to sell it internationally. But to sell it internationally, they're in New York trying to restructure the company so that they can sell it to international buyers before their local economy collapses.
I mean, their GDP is, we talked about it before. It's like 12 to 14 trillion, right? We're at 16 to 17 trillion in the United States. If they have 8 trillion in this debt coming due, I mean.
Here's a small story, anecdotal evidence. For 8 years, I've been walking by the China Bank here in Stockholm on Birger Jarlsgatan.
Near Humlegården.
Yeah, exactly. And it's got tinted glass. I have rarely ever seen one person in that bank.
I've never seen a single person go in or out of it.
I've never seen a single person go in and out of it. I mean, this is what the author was talking about. And I love China. I'm invested in China, but there's smoke here for sure.
I love China too, everybody.
It's going to be...
They're just, those companies in New York, they're just trying to prevent a fire sale. They're trying to get ahead of a fire sale.
South Korea prepares to launch first domestically produced space rocket, according to Reuters. Scheduled to conduct its first test launch into space of a domestically built rocket on Thursday. Best Buy to acquire Current Health to help make home the center of health. Current Health is a leading care-at-home technology platform that brings together remote patient monitoring, and now Best Buy is acquiring Current Health. Thank you, Lakeisha, for that one. Poppy sends in this one from India. Accenture may have 3 lakh employees in India. Is it lakh is 100,000?
That's right. Yeah. So that's 300,000. I mentioned it yesterday. Yeah.
So 300,000 employees in India by 2022. So next year. So hang on.
There are 250 now already.
250,000.
That's right.
And they may hire another 300,000.
No. Another 50,000.
Right. They will have 3 lakh employees. Okay, right. Okay, makes sense. And Atlassian co-founder, this is Australia's first big unicorn, Atlassian, mega unicorn. Atlassian's co-founder, Mike Cannon-Brookes, sells economic benefits of green investment with $1.5 billion pledge. Atlassian co-founder Mike Cannon says he's putting up a huge sum of $1.5 billion in a bid to help dramatically reduce carbon emissions by 2030. That's a tech founder putting his money where his mouth is. Love it. Well done.
By the way, Tyler,
yes.
Foreign has already opened the tech
encryption room. We've got 3 more headlines. Breakthrough discovery shows Vikings were active in North America 1,000 years earlier than Columbus. They not only found the place, they actually now, according to a new research, they actually were there active on the land, having kids in the whole shebang. And they know the exact location. In fact, there's a photo of one of the houses, which looks cool as hell, that I just tweeted. That would make for an amazing Airbnb, by the way. So I just tweeted that out. And Messi sends in this one that Uber tests shared rides in Africa as Uber pool stays shut in the US and Canada. And Nalormi sends in this one from Politico that Taiwan's digital minister on China's digital authoritarianism, Audrey Tang, insists that what has torn other democracies apart can help keep Taiwan together, which is digital tech. And BB sends in this one that Walmart is allowing some shoppers to buy Bitcoin at Coinstar kiosks, as Amay shared earlier. And here's the last one from DW out of Germany, that China censors NBA Celtics game over Tibet G comments. Broadcaster Tencent scrubbed all Boston Celtics games, highlights, and replays after a player Enes Kanter called President Xi Jinping a brutal dictator. Meanwhile, 43 nations criticize China over its treatment of Uyghurs. Broadcaster Tencent, Chinese partner to the U.S. NBA, has blacked out all Boston Celtics games after one of the team's players accused the Chinese government of cultural genocide in Tibet. All Celtics games, both current and archived, as well as highlights, will no longer be accessible in China after Kanter criticized the country's policies towards Tibet in a series of social media posts, including a 2-minute video in which he was seen wearing a t-shirt with an image of the Dalai Lama, Tibet's exiled spiritual leader. I'm here to add my voice and speak out about what's happening in Tibet under the Chinese government's brutal rule. Tibetan people's basic rights and freedoms are non-existent, Kanter said in the video posting on Wednesday. The post also featured text describing President Xi Jinping as a brutal dictator. And because he, as a player, went on Twitter and said something on Twitter, China's retaliating by banning all the team that he plays for, the Boston Celtics. All Boston Celtics games, past, present, and future, are no longer allowed in China for fear that he could, in the middle of the game, say something on the court, that could hurt dear leaders' feelings.
You want to be vaporized? Because that's how Chris Jung's going to get vaporized.
Okay, so there we go. So we're now going to join our friend Florian and May and Messi and others over at the Tech Inclusion News Around the World room. Thank you, everybody. Go have a nice Subway sandwich break, and we will see you in about 5 hours.